The ceiling collapsed above my bed at 2:17 a.m., and the thing that had been walking in my attic for 4 nights was already pressed flat between the beams, looking down at me. Plaster split over my chest. Dust and insulation dropped onto the mattress. I had been sitting upright, waiting for the step that always came at that exact time. But there was no step that night. There was only pressure, then impact, then the ceiling collapsed inward. Through the opening, I saw its body wedged between the joists. Its arms were wrapped around the wood. Its legs were bent sharply to fit the narrow space. Its chest was pressed flat against the beams. Its head angled downward through the hole. It did not fall. It held itself above me. 4 nights ago, I woke at 2:17 a.m. for no clear reason. I checked my phone, rolled onto my back, and heard a full step land above the center of the room. There is no upstairs to my house. It's just one level. The attic above the bedroom is unfinished and low. It is filled with insulation and wiring. There is no flooring. There is nothing up there that could support a person walking normally. The first step was slow and deliberate. It pressed directly into the beam over my bed. A few seconds later, a second step followed along the same joist. It moved in a straight line across the attic. It did not scratch. It did not scurry. It placed each step carefully. When it reached the wall near the hallway, it stopped. I stayed awake until morning. The next day, I convinced myself it was an animal. After work, I pulled down the attic ladder and climbed up with a flashlight. The insulation was even. The dust on the beams was undisturbed. There were no droppings, no torn vents, no gaps in the roofline. I checked every corner of the space. Nothing moved. Nothing shifted. That night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the first step landed in the same place as before. I was already awake. The second step followed the same beam. The third step paused directly over my pillow. Then the weight lowered slowly, as if something had shifted from standing to kneeling. The drywall above me made a faint ticking sound under pressure. I got out of bed and turned on the hallway lights. The pressure stopped immediately. When I turned the lights off and stepped back into the bedroom, a single step resumed above where I was standing. It responded to my position. On the third night, I set my phone to record before 2:17 a.m. and left it on the bedside table. The steps began on time. They followed the same path, but instead of stopping near the hallway wall, the weight shifted back toward the center of the room. It positioned itself directly above my head. A cracking sound ran through the ceiling. A thin line split the paint from one nail outward. The pressure was heavier than before. The next morning, I climbed into the attic again. This time, the insulation was pressed down in a narrow trail. It began near the far edge of the roof and ended directly above my bedroom. The imprint was tight and controlled, as if most of the weight had been kept lifted and only specific points had pressed down. The joists above my bed had fresh scuff marks. It had walked the same line twice. On the fourth night, I did not wait in bed. At 2:10 a.m., I sat in the dark living room and watched the ceiling. At 2:17 a.m., the first step landed. Not above the bedroom, above the living room. It moved slowly across the beams, directly over where I was sitting. When I stood up, the step adjusted overhead. When I walked toward the kitchen, the weight shifted along the ceiling to follow. It stopped walking the old path. It moved when I moved, following me from above. I walked to the front door and stepped outside onto the driveway. For several seconds, there was silence. Then I heard a dull shift from inside the roof. directly above the front door. It had followed me to the edge of the house. I stayed outside until sunrise. The next day, I sealed every visible exterior vent. I checked the roofline. I inspected the attic hatch. The latch was secure. The hinges were intact. There was no opening large enough for a person. On the fifth night, I stayed in my car in the driveway with a clear view of my bedroom window. At 2:17 a.m., the bedroom light turned on. No one entered the house. No shadow crossed the curtains. The light stayed on for exactly 1 minute, then shut off. The following night, I stayed at a friend's apartment across town. Before leaving, I installed a motion camera in the hallway, pointed directly at the attic hatch. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification. The footage showed the closed hatch for several seconds. Then it began to lower. It did not fall. It moved slowly and evenly, as if steady pressure from above was pushing it down. It opened halfway and stopped. There was no ladder extended beneath it. No one stood in the hallway. After several seconds, the hatch lifted back into place and sealed. When I returned the next morning, the ladder was still folded neatly inside the ceiling. The latch was engaged, but the crack above my bed had widened. Paint chips lay across the pillow. At 2:17 a.m., instead of steps, there was a sudden impact directly above me. The drywall split further. Insulation spilled through the widening gap. The ceiling sagged, then collapsed inward. I stepped backward as a section of plaster dropped onto the mattress. Through the opening, I saw it clearly. Its body was wedged between the beams. Its hands gripped the wood. Its legs were bent sharply to fit the space. Its chest pressed flat against the structure of the house. Its head angled down toward me. When I moved toward the hallway, it shifted along the beams, keeping pace overhead. Its hands and feet repositioned carefully, gripping and releasing the wood as it tracked my movement. I ran to the front door and stepped outside. The movement stopped the moment I crossed the threshold. The house went silent. I waited until sunrise before going back inside. The hole in the ceiling was real. Insulation covered the bed. The beam above the gap had deep marks carved into the wood, where something had held itself in place. I climbed into the attic one last time. The path through the insulation was deeper now. It ran from the far edge of the roof straight to the hole it had made above my bedroom. There was nothing up there. No animal, no person, only the carved root and the damaged beam. I have not slept in that house since. I still own it. I still pay for it. I check the camera feed every night from wherever I am staying. At 2:17 a.m., the motion alert triggers. The hallway camera activates, and the attic hatch lowers halfway. It stays there for several seconds. Then it rises back into place and seals. Every night, at the exact same time.